Do you ever look in the mirror at your face and go, what are you doing, crazy? Stop that. Yeah, that's going on right now. Okay, so, anyway. Today I have a history lesson for you. In French. Pardonnez-moi. That was not intentional. But anyway, today I have a French lesson, not a French lesson, a French history lesson for you. In French 3, one of our last projects of the year was to do a project over a French artist, painter, novelist, somebody. So I did Elizabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun, and I apologize in advance for any and all mispronunciations. And she was the portrait painter to Marie Antoinette. And I have a very unpopular history opinion. I sympathize with Marie Antoinette because it wasn't really... Okay, so yes, she could have been more sympathetic towards the plight of her people, but it's not her fault that she wasn't trained to be a ruler. All her mother was concerned about was creating good relations for her own nation by marrying off her daughters, and in doing that, she only taught her daughters things like etiquette and not how to rule a country, how to be a good wife and a good queen, but not a good functioning ruler. So, it wasn't her fault. Yes, she could have done things better, handled things more gracefully, but there you go. Okay, so Elizabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun was the portrait painter to Marie Antoinette. Her early life, not much is notable. She was born in Paris, 1775. Her father was also a portraitist, and her mother was a hairdresser. And from ages 6 to 11, she lived in a convent, which was fairly normal. And her brother Etienne became a playwright. Something kind of funny, not really funny, but interesting, is that when she was 12, her father died of an infection contracted during surgery to remove a fishbone that was caught in his throat. And then the next year, her mother married a wealthy jeweler. So she applied to a painter's guild that her father was also a member of after her studio was seized for painting professionally without a license, which apparently was a big deal in France. I don't know why, but she married Jean-Baptiste Pierre Lebrun, who was big in the art community, and they had a daughter, and pretty much right after their daughter was born, well, I guess like a year later, they traveled together through the Netherlands to see the techniques of the Flemish painters, which apparently they were a big deal in 1781, thereabouts. But she, as I mentioned earlier, she was most well known as the personal portraitist to Marie Antoinette. She was not technically her official portraitist, like in title, but she was Marie Antoinette's favorite, and she painted more than 30 portraits of the royal family over a course of 6 years. And while this was really good for Elizabeth while the royals were in power, once the revolution hit, she was basically forced to flee the country. And after she fled France, she worked painting royals in countries such as Italy, Austria, and Russia. And she was considered a very dear friend by Marie Antoinette, who was enchanted by her freshness and light personality. Some pictures of her portraits. Her headstone reads, Ici enfant je repose, pardon my accent, here at last I rest. And her daughter married a Russian nobleman, a marriage of which she disapproved. And at age 15, she was already earning enough money from her paintings to support herself, which is a big deal for a woman artist in France at that time. And she painted about 660 portraits in her lifetime. She was able to return to France eventually during the reign of Emperor Napoleon I, but she was still very much a supporter of the royals. So she, and she was the personal portraitist to the scapegoat of the revolution, so she never really had a good relationship with the new government. More pictures. Okay, here's a portrait of Madame du Barry, who, if you know anything about the French Revolution and that whole shebang, she was Marie Antoinette's husband's grandfather's mistress. So, like, the king before Louis the 16th, I think, she was his mistress. And Marie Antoinette was very proud, and she did not like to acknowledge Madame du Barry's position in court because she was a commoner, and Marie Antoinette was very appalled that she was given all of these jewels in her own apartments right next to the king's, and she refused to acknowledge her. She didn't talk to her, and it was a very big point of contention. Yeah. Okay. So, that was a brief bit about Elizabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun, and I'm really excited for French 3. And going back over this PowerPoint just enforced that. So, I will see you tomorrow.